What is the highest wet bulb temperature a human can survive, assuming no or negligible humidity? I've been reading a lot about how wet bulb temperatures are going to be a problem, and while this is an unrealistic scenario, I just kinda wanted to know the cap, so to speak, of temperatures that a human could survive assuming no humidity and infinite access to water. Sort of a contradiction in terms there on some level, but I think you get the point. I see that humans can survive in low humidity environments up to around 130 F55C, but when I'm looking, these places don't define low. I'm guessing it could be as high as 20 to 30. What sort of temperatures could a human in just about zero humidity survive? Is it still in that 55C range? Or could they go a bit higher? Edit: I meant dry bulb. I lived in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia for about 11 years, and Riyadh, being in the middle of the desert, has the lowest humidity most of the time. We used to leave office at 2:30 p.m. and one day the temperature crossed 50 degrees Celsius. We used to run to our cars in the lot and switch on ACs. That was the toughest temperatures I have ever seen. There's a couple of other variables you need to take into account. Time and hydration. A human could survive an insanely high amount of heat for a short period of time. Add time or take away hydration and you'll definitely die at much lower temperatures. I have been in 360 F for short periods of time. It was at a metal processing factory. It was bitter cold outside, and after bringing a bunch of stuff in, I would step into one of the walk-in ovens. It felt great, but I was careful to keep my breathing slow and shallow so that I did not burn my airways. There is a lot of good discussion here about temperature, humidity, and survivability. But really most of these things are really about enduring, not functioning. A few people did discuss having to do things at these extremes, but that also involved people lying on deck passed out. Most of the time we don't worry about how much heat we generate as we do ordinary things, but in situations like this it's necessary. It would be interesting to see some sort of table or curves with different line or entries for various activities, from full rest to vigorous workout. Does the 35°C wet bulb temperature apply if there is a fan blowing air? Since it's about sweat and evaporation, if you live in an indoor environment that is say 36°C, but you have a large ceiling fan blowing air over you 24/7, is it still fatal? This is the most important fact about climate change that needs to be talked about more. For the entirety of human history, the air temps have almost never been at the point where everyone dies. We are rapidly approaching times where the air will kill everyone without AC in some places. I thought that wet bulb temperature implied a RH of 100. For RH 100, it's not wet bulb, but simply a temperature at RH of X. So, this question is a bit confusing to me. Did I misunderstand something? Side question. Shouldn't wet bulb actually be the true temperature since it's basically excluding the effects of evaporation? On weather broadcasts they always say something like 80 F, feels like 105 based on the humidity. Shouldn't it technically be the other way around? 105 F, but feels like 80 F because evaporation is happening? Wet bulb temp is what you use for how well your body is able to cool off. You can basically consider it the lowest your body can cool off via evaporation. However, dry bulb is a bit different. You can find an equivalent temp to a fatal wet bulb temp, but the scenario will play much more a role, because you are less likely to die of overheating as much as dehydration.